Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist, host, and producer. And I have with me today someone you're going to love who's now a friend and a colleague, and someone's going to grace us with her presence once again at this year's live event, Kristin White. Welcome,
Hi,
Kristin.
JJ. How you doing?
I'm great. Nice to see you.
Good, good. Good to see you.
So we met last year in September, so 2024 in September at a goddess retreat here in Ojai. And I remember, we kind of click. We have sort of similar entrepreneurial energy. And of course, we had a goddess retreat. So put those two things together, and there's a lot of connection happening. And I really was impressed by your sound bath art that you do and magic that you do, and asked you to come and do some of that at the Embodied Healing Intensive, which I can say one client in particular who has had trouble in the past getting to her emotions. And I think the sound bath helped her over that hump. Like there were other things that we did that weekend, but that really like took her to the next level. And she was crying and she was like, "Oh my God, I have emotions." So it was very, very powerful. And I want to share the idea of sound baths for people that have never done them before, for people that are looking and are interested in learning more about how to do their own or where to learn from. I would like to give them you as an example. So welcome to the show, and let's get started with, where do you want to start? How did you get started doing a sound bath?
That's a great question. Sound bath is just meditation with sound. So I'd started meditating a long time ago, and there's several stories about that. But fast forward specifically to sound bath, I had a very dear friend who was starting to do women's retreats, and she and her partner wanted to offer a sound bath, and they had purchased some bowls, and they wanted somebody to practice on before they held their retreat. So I was like, volunteer, and I had never really heard of it before. I wasn't very familiar. Think I had seen someone with a bowl in a yoga class. That's the way that people are frequently introduced to sound baths. Um, but I went and just laid in this woman's meditation room, and they had seven bowls, and they did a sound bath for me. And I just remember it just being the most peaceful, joyful feeling, and not it wasn't even like incredibly transformative as much as it was just the most like relaxed, peaceful, joyful feeling. But I also at the like remember like having these conversations in language that I didn't understand, but that wasn't troubling at all. That I was like just imagining talking to the animals, and so when I came out of it and I started explaining to them like what my experience was, and I can remember one of the women who had been kind of in the spiritual community for a good deal longer than I had. This was sort of my dipping my toe in. This is 7 years ago. She was just like, "Oh my gosh," and she had words for what I was doing that I didn't have, and she's like, "This is what did she call it? Light language," and she just had all of these. She's like, "You're a natural," and but what I knew for sure was that it was a combination of music, which I have a big, has been a big part of my life, and meditation. And I immediately knew that it was going to be a much larger part of my future. And so it was just one of those things that right away, it wasn't even like a giant epiphany. It was more just this absolute knowing from the moment I first had one.
So that was 7 years ago.
Yeah, right at 7 years ago.
And you have, and now do you do this full time?
I do, yeah. So I have a studio in Redondo Beach, and I'm in my studio 2 times a week on Sundays and Wednesdays. And then I do a lot of privates. I actually just today booked another private with the city of Manhattan Beach. I'm going to be doing 7 sound baths over the course of a day. And so that's really fun. I did that for them last year. And so I'm coming back again this year for them. And yeah, I mean, I've done privates just all over Los Angeles, Orange County, Ventura. The instruments are heavy, so they don't travel that well. I've had people offer to, for me to go other places, but it's quite expensive to pack up the instruments and take them. So it is kind of something that, as far as I can drive my car, or as I'm willing to drive my car, I've taken the sound baths. But yeah, that's what I do.
Well, what did you do? So you have music, were you doing music before this? Like, what was the part of your life? What was your passion before this changed at all?
Yeah, so so when I was 6 years old, my mother inherited a small amount of money. And I grew up in this very middle class neighborhood, I grew up very middle class. But my father just thought, I'm gonna let my wife do whatever she wants with the money. It was kind of traditional. My dad made the money, mom was like, what are we gonna do with the money? And he's like, Sandra, whatever you want to do with the money. And it was a surprise to everyone when she went out and bought a Steinway and Sons grand, not even a baby grand, a Steinway and Sons grand piano. And she said, I want my children to play piano and I want them to have the very best instrument to do it. So in our very middle class home, we had this very giant, beautiful piano. And it really did inspire me. So I got quite inspired and I took lessons all the way from 7 years old until I went to college. And I was very serious about it. I played every day for an hour or more. I studied music theory. I studied, and I really thought that there was a good chance I was going to go to the Boston Conservatory. That was kind of the plan. But then I ended up like wanting to try something else and just went a different direction when I went to college. So I have quite a background in music and music theory and that kind of thing.
Well, obviously, whatever you were doing before this was not as satisfying to you if you made this big switch, right? I mean, the day that you got the knowingness that you were going to. I mean, we pivot all the time, right? Like
Right.
our growth invites us to stretch and to do things. And when we have a calling that we can't ignore because it is so deep in ourselves and you have that deep knowing, you pivot from that. But I'm guessing, like, were you looking for something at the time or you were?
Well, I was, and I had been looking for a while. My career that I had before this, I was a political fundraiser and a political event planner. And so I worked all over the United States and all the big cities and raised money for politicians and that kind of thing. And I loved my career, but I was never home. And I was just on the road 3 out of 4 weeks of the month, and then I had a child, and I was still on the road 3 out of 4 weeks during the month, and eventually I was like, oh, I need to be home. Like I really felt a calling to like come home and parent my child. And so I did. And that was talk about a huge transition. I mean, I went from like a really big life with a lot of people needing me and feeling very important and that kind of thing to like boom, just one person needing me and being the center of that person's life. That was a huge transition. But eventually, like they get older, they go to school, and I was like, there's something next. What's next? And I had really just been like, really wondering like what's next, and I couldn't quite figure it out, but I was just open to it. And I am pretty type A when it comes to many things. I'm a meditation teacher now, so it's kind of a type A meditation teacher, right? But I very much was like, well, what is it? Like, what am I doing next? What am I doing next? And so that question had been around for a while. I did try to just relax into it so that it could come to me rather than force anything. And I had kind of, yeah, I've just been looking around, but I didn't want anything to be forced. And so when this happened, and it just was just like this, like it was incredibly profound, but also very gentle. Like it was so interesting because I thought that it would like hit me over the head, but it didn't feel that way. It just felt more like, this is it. Here we are. This is what you're doing. And so, I started going to sound baths all over Los Angeles. I invited a neighbor of mine to join me at a sound bath. And the next week after I invited my neighbor to join me for a sound bath, she said, I signed up for classes. And I was like, whoa, okay. And within a couple of weeks, I just said, you know what? You can't do this without me. And she said, I have been waiting for you to ask, which is very funny because I am the kind of person who always would ask, but I had just done some human design thing where it said, like, wait for the invitation. And I was trying not to, I was going against my impulse, my instincts, just because of this other thing, and I was like, I've got to do this with her. But I wanted her to ask me. And then when I finally just blurted it out, she said, I've been waiting for you to ask. And so we started our business together at that point.
Oh, you have a partner.
So I did have a partner. Yeah. So I had a partner and we started the whole thing together and it was wonderful. And, it really just amplified accelerated our ability to like, get it up and running. I mean, once we had the idea, we were like trained and started our business just within like 2 months. It was very, very fast. But during COVID, she and I, she's my neighbor, so we were in the backyard together and we were swinging on my hammock swings and I said I miss it so much. It had all shut down and LA was very, very shut down. And I just said I miss it so much and she said I don't miss it at all. And I said, "Oh, well, we need to look at that." And so, eventually what we found was it was just the day-to-day sound bath that she didn't like. She wanted to go very deep one-on-one with people. And I wanted to like spread it to the world. So our overall goals were a little different. And now that's what she's doing. She is just tremendous and wonderful and spreading goodness one-on-one with people in the most deep, beautiful way. And so we're both doing exactly what we're meant to do.
Perfect. Nice. And you have a space, which is awesome. And I know you, like you said, you have people come on Sundays and Wednesdays, and then you're
Yes.
kind of all around. And then talk a little bit about, so I know one of the things that you launched, I believe it was this year, was the Sound Bath Academy.
I did, yes. So yeah, so I had my regular sound baths in my studio since 2019. And so then I very much I this is a fun story. So at the beginning of the year, I went to go see Esther Hicks. She was doing a thing down here in Long Beach, and I went to go see her. And I knew I had questions I wanted to ask about, like again, what's next? Because you figure out what to do, and then you do it, and you're kind of like, okay, this has been fun. What am I doing next? Like it's just always the question for me. So I wanted to know what was next. But I also knew that, like, in listening to her in the past, like in trying to manifest things, that, you needed to kind of have a real idea of what you wanted in order to be able to manifest it. And I just couldn't figure out what I wanted in order to manifest. And so I wanted to ask her, like, how do you manifest something when you don't know what it is? And I was in a room with probably 300 other people, and she had said at the very beginning, your question will be answered. Whether you get chosen to ask a question or not, your questions will be answered. And I was like, come on. Like, that's like, really? And it's 100% true. So I had like 5 questions going in. I had 5 answers coming out, and I was not chosen. But the answer to the question of like, how am I going to make this happen? Was just put everything into the vortex that you know to be true about what you want. So you don't have to have it fully realized. You have to just put everything that you know. So I knew I wanted to work on something that was sound bath related. I knew I wanted to work on something that was not place specific. I didn't want to be tied to the studio. My daughter's going to be, well, she's a junior in high school. My husband's starting to look at retirement. We're starting to think about doing a lot of traveling, that kind of thing. So I wanted something that I could move around. I continued to hold on to my goal of wanting to really take sound bath to the world. And I mean, it seems so obvious that a course is the answer, but like I didn't have that answer at the time, but I put it into the vortex and I nourished that and swirled it around. And then I was doing one of my own retreats in Joshua Tree in last May. And um, a friend of mine talked about another friend of ours who had or a friend of hers who had a course. Not, it's unrelated to like sound or spirituality, but and she's like, I think that you should do this, Kristen. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I went to the Integratron the next day. I took my whole group of to the Integratron, which is this massive storied building where they do sound baths. It's kind of the mothership of the the modern sound bath movement. And I was laying, just receiving a sound bath, and I felt the biggest download I've ever felt in my whole life. It was as though the universe was just yelling at me, do the course. And I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And it's like, do the course. And I was like, okay, cool, I got it. Okay, okay. And I mean, and then it just wouldn't shut up. Like it just kept yelling at me, like, you've got to do this course, which was just kind of bizarre because I've never really had a download like that before. And I was like, I got to do this course. So, my friend hooked me up with her friend who ended up coaching me, and we did a beta test in the fall. And then right in December, we launched the Sound Bath Academy as it's known now.
So, not everyone, but many of the listeners of the show know Esther and Abraham. Was it your first time at a Abraham event?
It was my first time.
So to be clear, it's Abraham, not Esther, who's channeling.
Right.
Esther's
Yes.
channeling. Abraham is
Yes.
what's being
That's
channeled.
correct. Yes.
And yeah, I think I've been to three events, and definitely, yeah, questions get answered whether you're asking them or not. But you could also listen to some of the stuff online or the videos that are online. And they used to have a podcast too, which I don't think they're doing anymore. But, because I'll always, go and look for if I'm having like I'm stuck in something and I need to get some clarity around it. But I also think it's also just elevating the frequency of allowing it in versus our brains get in the way and try to figure things out. And we use what we know as our like what we can pull from. It's almost like creating a recipe out of what you already have without buying anything new, right? But when we get like when we open up to what else is possible, of course creating something new means you're going to do something that it wasn't possible before or that you didn't know about before. That's why it's new. And it's like that's how we expand to get to that level. So I think that I love that you had 5 questions and you also got 5 answers. I know that I've met some of the ladies who have been taking your sound baths and did your course at the Goddess Retreat in September, and I guess they were part of the beta because I remember you were still working on the course at the time, and you launched it in December. So talk a little bit about, so you said the goals were to not be location specific, something flexible, and to get it out to the world. When you started to think about how to teach this, had you taught music before, or had you taught anything like this before?
Well, I have held workshops, which I always called like introduction to the instrument workshops, and I've certainly so to a small degree, yes, I've taught them live. So I've done like 4 hour workshops live, but not anything kind of as specific as this. So I do have a teaching background, a little bit of a teaching background, but also a big management background. Even just with event management, we're talking very large scale events. And so I know how to like put order to things and write
Yeah.
manuals and do things like that. So that's all part of just, the experience that I had up until now. So that part of it I found really easy. Like I knew a ton about, I did have to look up things like the history. Like I just didn't carry that around in my head. So I did look up the history of it all. And I did do a little research because the course is called Sound and Stillness, Mastering the Art and Science of Sound Bath Facilitation. So that's something that I care very deeply about getting across to people is that it's not random. You can't just buy a set of bowls and just know how to play them. They don't all play well together. You really do have to apply music theory and really I believe that the art and the science were. Oh, and I know that you also are really proponent of the science of things. So I mean, I really love the science of meditation, and I feel like when people understand the science of meditation, it allows them to give way to the magic of it all. So I talk a lot about that. I teach a lot about that, and I ask my students to talk a lot about that too, because I do believe that that's going to be part of what will make this really bloom in the world.
Yeah, someone recently, one of my clients said, you do a really good job. Who I saw, I can't even say who it was, but someone said, you do a really good job of making woo-woo thing scientific, or like
Yes.
bringing the left brainers into the right brain. And then I could do it in reverse too. I could take right brainers into a left brain also. But for the people that are skeptics or don't understand or think, when we look at, and I love that you said that it's called the science, because
Mhm.
I'm sure there's partly like two levels of science. Let me say that again. There's probably two levels of science, that is my guess, that you're dealing with. One, the science of sound and music as it goes together with the bowls and their capabilities and their frequencies. But then there's the science of the frequencies and what they do to our bodies and to our brains. Yes? Do you cover those things?
Yes, absolutely. And even a third, which I would say just the science of meditation and how to approach meditation, what that does, and how that also affects your body. So, but I think we may be saying the same thing.
Well, I would love if you would be willing to share a little bit of that science right now with the audience, about the science of the sound bath when it comes to the frequencies, and potentially however you talk about it, whether it be in meditation or in the brain or neurologically or in relaxation and nervous system. I'm not quite sure. So I would love for you to share something, a little tidbit of your course, if you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind, about the science of sound baths.
I'm such a geek for this. I would love to. So really, the purpose of a sound bath, unlike kind of other sound healing things. So the purpose of a sound bath specifically is to really just allow a person to relax into a meditation and for them to access the meditative brainwave states. So when you're in your meditative brainwave states, that's the alpha brainwave state, and the theta brainwave state are the two that you're trying to achieve. So I have all these graphs about meditative brainwave states, and kind of, we if you think back to, like, high school biology, we have five brainwave states that we live in at any given time. So gamma is a right here right now brainwave state where but it's highly focused, and it goes like this. It's like up and down, really sharp, really, really active brain. So this is where, like, a doctor who is performing surgery, a surgeon, or a musician who's learning an intense piece of music, they are just completely focused on what's happening right here, right now. And, they're not thinking about their golf game. They're not thinking about, picking up milk on the way home. Like, it is all about what's happening. So that is not a restful brainwave state. It's not, it's very taxing on the body. We're very grateful for it. I always would like to remind people we're grateful for all of our brainwave states. They have a purpose, but it's not meditative. Then on down the scale next, where it's still up and down, but getting a little bit less sharp, is the beta brainwave state. And that's where adults spend most of our lives. And that's where, like, we're, making plans, responding to emails, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, analytical, that kind of thing. Just taking care of business, paying the bills, getting the job done. That's where you spend most of your time, is in the beta brainwave state. And then next down is alpha brainwave state. So I adore alpha brainwave state. And the way that I love to talk about it is that it is where young children up until about age 7 spend most of their time. So when you think about your childlike or a childlike brainwave state, it's very expansive. It's taking things in through the senses, very sensory. So you think about a young child, they're not concerned with the past or the future. They are really very much in the present. And it's all about, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm wet. I'm like, it's just sensory. And so what you want to do in a meditation is just open yourself up to, what do you feel? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing in this room right here, right now? The next brainwave state is theta brainwave state. Theta is lucid dreaming. I talk to my clients like, this is your brain at play. This is when you're not having conscious thoughts, but your brain is just out there just having a ball, making things up and just taking you on a journey. This is where kind of the magic kind of happens, when people talk about, like, having visions, or being on other planes, or being, just in a different place altogether. This is that theta brainwave state. This is your mind just out at play. And then the last one is delta, and delta is sleep. And of course, if somebody wants to fall asleep in a sound bath, that's fine. That's what they need. We'll wake them up at the end. But then I talk about how to achieve these brainwave states. So when we want to achieve, alpha brainwave state would be the one that you go to first. So you just relax and listen to the instruments. In a sound bath, you play harmonic intervals. So that means that you play two sounds, like when you have the bowls, you play two bowls at a time that form a harmonic interval that is just very, very pleasing to the body. Different intervals kind of bring out different emotions in people. And this is where like having that sound, sound theory really matters. And this is the science of sound theory and how that matters. So if you're playing, but it starts to get a little like detail oriented for people who don't understand it. But if you're playing, say, a chord or an arpeggio, like what a singer would sing in order to warm up. So like bum 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 bum, that is your bass note, a third interval, a fifth interval, and an eighth interval going up and then reverse coming back down. Those all sound really lovely together. So if you buy your bowls in those intervals, you're going to be able to help people achieve that theta and that alpha brainwave state. And so then you can also have fourth and sixth intervals. I mean, it goes on and on and on, but the intervals have they affect people very similarly. So, like, an example is that a fourth interval is just this very open sound. So it just feels very expansive and open to the human body. The sixth interval is this very like angelic sound. People feel like it's just very like kind of like delightfully mysterious. And the fifth interval is like the most stable interval there is. And that is like, that just makes people feel very grounded. So that is how music affects the body and how it affects you in a sound bath. And so then what I ask people to do in a sound bath is just to stay very focused on the music. And I'm like, just keep, anytime your brain starts to wander away from the sounds, just bring it back. And I ask them to ask themselves, number one, how does it make me feel physically? Because you have a physical reaction to the sounds. These are vibrations coming at the air into your body. Very different experience than just listening to it on some AirPods. You can feel it. It has resonance. You can feel it in your heart. The minute you hit a gong, everybody in the whole place just, whoa, like their body just has this like release. Um, so you can, how do you react physically? How do you feel emotionally about it? Like what do you, some of the sounds are very most of them are, relaxing, but like some of them are just very um like just make you kind of feel like you're in the swimmy environment. And then sometimes it's a little bit more intense, and that's okay. The gong sounds can be very intense, but you never want to surprise somebody. You never want it to be too sharp. You don't want people to feel startled. You're doing something wrong in a sound bath if you startle people. But you do want to, but it can lead up to a little intensity because it's a journey. And so as you lead into intensity, it gives the person that opportunity to just breathe in and just release. That's the whole purpose of having a gong and a sound bath, is just to give your clients an opportunity to just kind of feel some tension and then feel some real release. And then the last thing I say, and this just goes directly to that theta brainwave state, is that, uh, am I transported? So it's like, how do I feel physically? How do I feel emotionally? Where am I transported? And that's it. I mean, people, that's kind of the instruction people need, and that's the science of it. And people really get there. Like people come into my sound baths who have never been able to meditate successfully. I hear this time and time again, and they're like, I got there. I did it. And it's frequently because of what I teach them beforehand.
Excellent. Well, I watched people get there at the Embodied Healing Intensive, and I think with the way that the weekend went, and you were there for the whole weekend, I think, I kept bringing it into the body, into the body, into the body, so that way
Mm.
people were more present, and we didn't have to. You didn't teach this there, but it happened for people who've had a hard time being in their body because we spent all weekend trying to get into the body, and then we're on Sunday, and it was easier so they could click into the alpha state and then allow themselves to be there and have the emotional response. I don't, have you ever been to the sound bath here in Ojai, to do at Meditation Mount?
I have not, but I'm on their website. I mean,
Trinity,
I'm on their mailing list.
Yeah,
I
it's
I
they
want
were
to.
they were called the Trinity of Sound. I think there's only two of them now, so they stopped calling themselves that. But and then, or at least if the three of them are still doing it, they rotate like two of them doing it. And I remember when we first moved here, I started going somewhat regularly. I mean, not like every week, but maybe because it was a Friday night sunset sound bath from Meditation Mount. And I remember maybe a couple times in taking a client and her friends, and the friend I remember coming out of it and saying, and I had had tears. I didn't cry like hysterically, but I think I had tears, most of them. And I didn't really analyze it and think about why I had tears. There were multiple reasons why. I was appreciative that I was here in Ojai finally. I was, whatever. I was appreciative because of my relationship or because I could be present or that I was meditating. I mean, many different reasons to feel gratitude and appreciation, which then released any tension around that or fear or stories or whatever. And then so this friend of a client, she was disturbed. And I remember because she said there were some dark energies, and she was a little, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna say she's a little nervous of a person, maybe untrusting. I don't know how, I think she's quite religious. I'm gonna say she's a little tight. Anyway, so when she said, there's that, well, it felt like dark energies, and I was like, those weren't dark energies. Those were lower vibrations that hit places that you're probably uncomfortable with. And I really appreciated, because not all sound baths are the same, as
Yeah.
some are really, really good and effective in some ways, and some are just pleasant in other ways, and some are just, or some in this case for that one, they really have it. They have a way they do it all the time. I mean, it's not always exactly the same. Like I've been around your sound baths enough with the event and my event that I feel like they were all a little bit different.
Hmm.
And none of them were the same. You didn't repeat the same thing all the time. It was more of personalized for the people in the room and what we needed and what the energy was. And you and I had talked about that before, because I wanted the sound. So I want to tell a story before I get to there. I wanted the sound to move people in ways they hadn't been moved before. And I want it to be in a more alpha state of being present, and to allow the emotional energies to kind of be unlocked and to be felt and then released, because that was part of the embodied healing intensive, was connecting our brains to our bodies and being able to embody more, because so many of us are disconnected. We think and think and think, and our head spins all the time, and we have anxiety, and then we have all these physical pains, and we're not listening to our body, and we're not using the 88% of our subconscious, which literally is in your body, not your head. But we're so used to overthinking or figuring things out with our heads or with our brains or with this information, that we're cut off from the divine guidance that is coming to us all the time, but we're not in a state to receive it. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to do the sound bath, was to help people get there. And I had in one of my groups this year in the Rewire, one of my clients had just attended like someone else's church. She attended two other people's churches. One was very familiar, and the other one was not. And she let us in on what had happened, and she'd done a polo in the group and said, "So I have a question. I know, JJ, you always want us to sort of understand or know or be curious about like where, like if we're having a feeling, like where does it come from or what's going on with us." And she told the story about the church, and that it was uncomfortable because it was very unfamiliar of what they did at the church. And then, and the minute the music started, she said she started to cry, and she cried the entire service. And at first, I gave a lot of like, oh, well, and I went to the history of religion and churches and blah, 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 and sort of my experiences at Agape and whatever. And then I got to go hiking. I went, wait a minute, I missed the biggest factor here, that music is a frequency, and the
Yep.
frequency is going to get into the subconscious of things you don't know what it is. It's just there, and it's going to rattle it around a little bit. It's going to hit some place that you don't have to know what it is. And I did say that you don't have to know what it is. And I encourage her to continue going. I'm like, keep going, keep crying, keep allowing it to come out, because it's jiggling something inside of you that is resonating with whatever's being said or the tones that your body is hearing. And it's having a memory. You don't have to know what it is, but I do believe you want to allow it. I think it's the
Hmm.
healthiest thing to allow it and to allow it out. So sound baths can do that, where when you're so present, I don't want anyone to go back into their head and say, well, why did I cry? Who cares why you cried? Just get to the crying, because it's an access point that will open up the brain to be more aware. And then the consciousness will come in later when you need to know, because it's a problem you need to solve. But I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot about the frequency part, right? Because there are states of, even like an audiobook I'm listening to right now. I can listen to it all day long every day because it puts me in a meditative state because of what's happening. I feel positive. I feel surrendered. I feel, or Abraham. I'll have Abraham playing at times in the background all day long because I know I'm going to get to a certain frequency, because that's the frequency that's being given. So sound baths are definitely, they're not all awesome, but but Kristen's
Yeah.
are awesome. And I definitely would recommend anyone who's thinking about exploring this more. We'll talk a little bit about her course and what somebody would do with it. I think it's really fun to meet some of the clients that you brought to the event, both mine and to Helen's event, and to see them like flourishing with their own sound bath business now. Can you talk a little bit about it? Do you cover that piece, the business side of creating a sound bath business, or is it just the application of the instruments and the sound?
So I don't cover a whole lot of the business side, and here's why. Because I have so many clients now, and they're all in different places in their lives. So, to say, oh, like here's how you start a business. A lot of people already have a thriving yoga business or a Reiki business or a therapy or something like that, and then this is just an add-on to their business. So I don't talk a lot about it. I do, however, in the last module, spend a good amount of time talking about how I formed my business and give them like really good tips on like how to build a mailing list and like how to find a studio and that doesn't cost a lot of money and just how to get started. I was very, this is funny. This happened with my husband both when I first started the sound bath business and when I started the course. I said to him both times, like, hey, I'm going to do something new. I'm thinking about doing this. And he said, that's fantastic, hun. I'm so happy for you. I don't want it to cost me any money. And I was like, it's not going to cost you any money. And so I was like, I have the money saved up to do it. And in both cases, I was able to make it work with very little money saved up and just a desire to make it happen. I am a great manifester, but also just if you hear good ideas, you can work off of other people's manifestations. So I do talk some about it, but not a whole lot for the reasons that I gave earlier.
Yeah, well, so who would you say the course is right for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is, I mean, it is right for anyone who is really looking to get very good sound bath instruction. It's for somebody who's just ready to go. You're ready to buy your instruments, you're ready to go. You don't have to buy all the instruments. You can start with just a few, but I it's my most average client is somebody who is like kind of stuck and doesn't know. There's so much information out on the internet, JJ, about how to get started. So I tell you exactly how, like, what instruments to buy, how what websites to go to. So I start that granular, just like what to buy, where to buy it. It has a 15% off bonus to one of the largest sound bath companies in the United States. And so, you get 15% off of your new instruments. Um, but it's really very much for people who are just ready to go. So I kind of market it to people who already have a business and they're just looking for this to be an add-on. But certainly that if you're just somebody who really wants to learn how to play a beautiful sound bath, this works for you too. So yeah. So just it's exciting. I mean, I love talking about this.
Good. I'm glad. Well, I don't know anyone else that's teaching a sound bath class. I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure this is not the first, but because I've met you and I know you and I've experienced your sound baths and I've seen your students and see how well they're doing and how much
Mhm.
they love it and how much it's changed their lives. I thought this would be a great thing to share with my audience in case someone is looking to add this on to their business or start a business, or again just learn because maybe they're already doing it, and it takes it to the next level, because knowing more on how to do it, especially playing with the frequencies, is the science and the application of the transformation.
Mhm.
When you're a beginner and you're just sort of making sounds, you're not deliberately trying to do something, you don't know how to get to where you want to go. Like I
Mhm.
had said to you for the embodied healing intensive, I very specifically, different than the goddess retreat. Goddess retreat, I think she just wanted us to be meditative
Yeah.
and present. And I'm like, oh no, no, I want you to go deep. I want you to go deep. I want you to rattle all around. I want to be able to, I want to unstuck any emotions people are like gripping onto, because this is our last shot on Sunday, to have
Yeah.
people like break through that to that next level of embodiment. And so it was very specific. And I think without understanding, like you said, the sciences of everything, that from the instruments to meditation and the brainwaves, then you're just sort of guessing when you're playing the instruments, and you're going based on what feel here, like what you're feeling, and what you can hear. And if it sounds good to you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do something specific with it, isn't it a lot faster to understand all the mechanics so that you can deliver that experience very deliberately
Yeah.
instead of guessing?
And one thing I would like to say is that, while we've talked a lot about music and music theory, it is absolutely not essential for someone taking my course to have any knowledge of music. So what I like to say is that you don't have to know about music. You just have to learn from someone who does. And that makes a big difference. Like it is essential that you learn from someone who knows what intervals are and can just teach you that. And it's very easy, you don't even have to know fifth interval, sixth interval, what it means. You have to know to play a C and an E bowl at the same time. And you don't have to know that that's a third interval and why it's fabulous. You just need to know that that's good. That's going to get you there. That's going to get your clients there. So it's not complicated. It's not kind of some complicated music theory thing. If you know the alphabet, you can do it.
Yeah. And Kristen, so I'm sure by now I've announced on the show that the next event is called Unleashing Your Manifestation Power, and Kristen will be doing a sound bath, and it'll be October 17th to the 19th. So if you already have a ticket or you're thinking about signing up, you're going to get to experience her there. But in the meantime, and on top of that, and instead of that, for some of you, I would love for you to explore getting her course. So I know you had a specific little offer for my community because you know me and you've met some of them.
I do, yes. So normally the course is $595, and that's for four modules, and each module's under 2 hours, and it's and it's then the lessons are in like little bite-sized pieces so that you can take it at your own rate. But for JJ's audience, I took $200 off of the fee, so it's $395. Yeah, just for JJ's audience.
Perfect. Thank you. And you can go to jjflazanes.com/sound bath to get your link directly to the course. And also in the show notes will be a link to another webinar that Kristen did to explain the course and why you'd want it and all the things more deeply than we talked about today. So you're welcome to go watch that as well. So make sure to check the show notes for that link as well. And I don't know what else. Anything else you want to add about anything about, you had come to the embodied healing intensive. I'd love to hear, because that was your first time. I mean, I'd met you 2 weeks before that. So I'd love to hear, I never did get to ask you like what you thought of the event.
Well, so when I met you, I mean, I just right away, I can remember exactly where you were sitting in the living room the minute I like laid eyes on you. And there was just something I just saw you and I saw your energy and I was like, I want to talk to that woman. And just right away, we really clicked. And I think we clicked over many things, the entrepreneurial spirit within us, but also just the science and the art. And I was just so delighted to meet you. And then you invited me to the embodiment I'm getting the words wrong. What's it
The,
called?
the embodied healing intensive.
All right, let me start over. And then you invited me to the embodiment healing intensive, and I brought along some of my clients and some of my friends. I mean, it was just spectacular. I think anytime that you can pull your tools into your body, and really just, I mean, your body's what carries you through this life. And it's where, your spirit and everything good and everything bad, it all is in there, and just being able to do, gosh, JJ, when I think about that, I'm like, oh, I loved the, oh gosh, all I'm thinking of is Kuan Yin. What was the Qigong? No, it wasn't Qigong. It was
Yeah, that was she gone.
I loved the Qigong. I loved the Imago exercises that we did. I loved it all. I mean, I really did. And I was like, and and I'm also experienced at a lot of it. And I was kind of like, well, I wonder if this is what this is going to be like. I went because of you. But then when I got there, it was beautiful. And I kind of came home and I just lived around the corner from where it was. And my husband was like, oh, you had a good, like before I said that I had a great time, he's like, oh, you had a good time, didn't you? Like he could just see. I just felt like I was kind of just really just enriched by it all.
Good. Yeah. Well, I aim to transform people who are ready. That's sort of always the goal of bringing people together because you guys were newer to me than everybody else that was in the
Hmm.
room. But I get right in, and that's really important to me because it's not one of those kinds of events where I'm like, here's who I am, and here's what I do, and here's why you should trust me. It's like, no, you got to come in and kind of trust me like right away because I'm throwing you in a bunch of exercises because my goal is to have you leave being a little different or being a lot different or having a plan to be different or being ready for the next stage or the next evolution and expansion of whatever that means to you based on what you came in with. So hopefully if you're listening to this and you're enjoying our conversation, you'll also consider coming to Unleashing Your Manifestation Power on October 17th to the 19th in Redondo Beach, California. So, Kristin, if someone lives in the area and wants to come to a live event of yours, or why don't you tell them where to follow you, where to find out more about your Sunday and Wednesday sound baths?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Kristin White, and my business is called White Light Sounds with an S. So you can find it at whitelightsounds.com. The sound baths are $33 a person. I try to keep them very affordable. If you want to come often, I have a package $99 for five. And so that's really fun if you want to come a lot. Yeah, but I have a beautiful studio. It's quite large. It's really lovely, just right across from the ocean. It's on Catalina Drive in Redondo Beach. There's free parking. We've got mats. It's just a great setup. So, check it out. I also am on Instagram and Facebook, and you can find me just under White Light Sounds.
Beautiful. Well, whenever you want to come up to Ojai and go, either go to that sound bath or just hang out, let me know. And that would be more of a research, right? It's a business thing. You could like write it off. We can
Oh,
go do a sound bath up there and
the best research ever.
exactly, exactly. But I look forward to seeing you again very soon in person, whether it be hopefully sooner than October, but if not, and I can't wait to check out your course. And I hope everyone goes to jjfilzanes.com/sound bath. You're going to get $200 off the price of the sound bath course. And then you can add that to whatever you're doing, your practice, even if it's just a healing practice. I definitely think it would be great for anyone who, my acupuncturist, one of my acupuncturists I used to go to, when I had the needles in, he would do a sound bowl.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really lovely. It was a nice addition to, some people would like leave the room, or I got the other acupuncturist would do more pressure points on my feet, like a little foot massage, which was nice too. But I really liked the bowl. I thought that was really wonderful. And so whether you're a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, a yoga person, a personal trainer, a healer of any kind, you're teaching classes, this might be a really great addition to your practice and to your offerings for your clients and for yourself. So thank you so much, Kristin, for being here.
Thanks, JJ.